Hey y'all, welcome to Spot of Color. We are a local art and craft supply store, and I'm so happy to have you here to join us in painting a lovely fall painting. So let's go and paint, shall we? Welcome everyone. Here is our painting that we are going to create. Lovely little give thanks, Thanksgiving painting. I want you to get out your supplies. Now, if you've purchased a kit from us, you will have an assortment of brushes, some paper towel, because I know what a commodity that is recently, some paint in these little cute little cups, and you will need to have a glass of water with you. That does not come in the kit, as well as a paper plate or some foil or any kind of surface that you're willing to put paint on so that you can do mixing and get everything going. As well as in the kit, you'll have a canvas, and it'll have some of the text and things sketched onto it in pencil. If you did not purchase the kit, you will need an 11 by 14 canvas that you have based in a nice warm tone, fairly light, kind of like a manila folder color. You can order these kits from me. You can pick them up in store, or you can have them shipped to your home. So let's go ahead and get started. What you will want is to get open your brown paint. It'll be on this side of your paint kit. This is like a super dark burnt umber, like a really dark color. So if you're getting your own paints, you will need this dark brown color. I want you to take a small little round brush. For us, it'll be these. And you will just get a little bit of paint on there. As you're painting, if you are right-handed, I want you to start from the top left and work your way down to the bottom right. Now, if you're left-handed, do that from the opposite direction. Start from the top right and work your way down to the bottom left. This will just make sure you don't smear paint around all over your hand or all over the canvas. So we are going to start with these arcing leaf structures here, and we're going to do the little stems. And then we'll be doing these little sticks and some of these pine cones with this color. When you're doing these arcing shapes, I want you to really work from the shoulder and the elbow. Otherwise, you're going to get like jagged edges. Yeah. So you just lightly tap and work into an arc. As you get to the end, you want to lift your paintbrush up a little bit. Give a nice pointed end. Just like that. Go ahead and do the rest of this down here. Make it a little bit thicker at the start and nice and light and skinny at the end. Great. Now we're going to move on to some of these sticks here. I want you to just tap your brush down and drag. Just like that. And each of these little nubbins, just tap your brush and drag, and then connect. Go ahead and do all of your sticks here. Dipping your brush in between each stroke so you have lots of paint on your brush. And I want you to fill in your little acorn cap up here. Do the outlines first. then fill in the center. Great. Rinse out your brush when you're not using it so it doesn't dry up with paint. And we're going to switch to a bigger round brush like this one, and we're going to fill in some of our pine cones. These are kind of egg-shaped ovals. Again, do your outlines first and then fill in the center. Right, we are now done with our dark brown color for now. We will be coming back to it at the end to do some details on the leaves. But next we are going to switch to our dark green. This is basically a hooker's green. You can get these paints in our store, but you'll have your kit here. This is a hooker's green. It's fairly dark. And we are going to use this small round brush again, we used earlier. We're going to put in these little fern-like leaves up here. When you're doing these leaves, what I want you to do is to create a nice circle at the base of each leaf. Once you've got that in there, I want you to take your paintbrush at the point of the leaf and drag down and connect the point of the leaf to the circle. Do that again on one that might be easier for you to see. Do your dot. And you can also drag it the other direction if you find that easier to get to that point. Do another one over here. Tap and drag, just like that. Now go ahead and fill in the rest of your dark green leaves. right, and that completes your dark green color. We will be moving on to this kind of brown, raw sienna kind of color. And it is going to do the acorn, part of your pine cones, and then some of the leaves. Now, however, if you don't like the brown leaves, you can mix your red and your yellow to make orange and make some of these leaves orange, if you would like. Not required. It's just an option for those of you that might be a little more skilled at paint and are wanting to try and mix your own. Great, so we're going to keep using this little round brush. We're going to start with painting in this acorn. Again, doing your outlines first, and then filling in the center. Cute little acorn. Great. So let's start with some of these leaves. Let's do this one first, just so you can see what I'm doing. With these leaves, I want you to tap your paintbrush down at the tip and then drag your brush back to the base of the leaf. Let me just show you what that looks like. Tap and then drag. If you want to put a little more pressure as you move back, you'll fill in more area. And like some fall leaves, they kind of have that ruffled, spiky edges to them. So what we're going to keep doing is just tapping and dragging our brush to do each of those spikes. So just tap and drag, and then fill in any of the gaps. Great. Tap and drag, just like that. Do as many little spikes as you would like. And vary them a bit so that they're different shapes, different sizes, stick out further than some, so it looks very natural. Make some of these a little fat. And then just go ahead and fill in the rest of these brown leaves on here with your color. Now if you've mixed your orange, go ahead and use that instead, but I am using the brown. Tap and drag. And that's as easy as that is. I find this painting really gives you a good sense of control over your brush, which is great for those of you who are beginners that are a little uncomfortable with holding a brush. It gives you a good idea of how to control it, where to put pressure, where to lift off, all of that kind of stuff. Do a few less spikes on these smaller leaves here. Otherwise they start to look a little furry. Slightly more advanced option with some of these is to go ahead and put in a few of the other leaf colors on a palette, like your paper plate or whatever you're using for your palette. Is to go ahead and put several colors on there and pick up a little bit of each color so that there's a little bit of color variation in each leaf. I like just the straight colors here in this one, but again, if you're a little more advanced and you want to go ahead and do that, feel free. And it's as simple as tap and drag. If you do get a little bit lost on which leaves go what color, those of you that purchased a kit will have a small little sample of the painting that you can paint off of and see where I've placed some things. So if you get a little lost, take a look at your little reference image there and just copy that. Those of you that didn't purchase a kit, if you want to zoom to the end of the video or find a picture of this somewhere on the website, print it off and then have it next to you while you're painting, that's great. And of course you can see it right next to me. Great. Now we're going to move on to our pine cones. A lot of the pine cone shapes are just kind of ovals, a little bit of rounded diamond shapes, some rounded triangle shapes. So as you're putting in your little scales of the pine cone, just think about those types of shapes as you're going. And if you look at a pine cone, they kind of grow in a pattern. The little diamonds and things kind of stick out in a pattern. So it's kind of like rows and kind of diagonals. So just really keep in mind keeping the right spacing between each of these. Again, look at your reference picture. It's going to be really helpful here for you to get a really nice natural pine cone pattern on this. But where I like to start is at the very tip. Do a center one that's nice, long, and tall. There's always one that sticks out at the top, right? And then as we work around, these ones on the edges, you want to be a little more triangular and working into your dark circle. You do want them to overhang outside of these dark circles so it kind of breaks up that hard edge. And just work your way around with these little scales on the pine cone. I'm sure they have like a detailed name, but I definitely don't know exactly what every part of a plant, what it's called. So I'm calling them scales. The ones in the center I make look a little bit more like diamonds. And the ones on the edges are a little more triangular. Make some long ones, make some skinny ones, different shapes. Don't all look exactly the same. My dark brown isn't quite dry yet, so I may have to come back to this one. That's what's great about acrylic paint. You can just come back once it's dry and paint right over it. So if you make a mistake, just come back later, paint over it. As I get to the bottom, I make them a little bit smaller and a little bit skinnier. And there you go, pine cone scales. Now let's do it on the big one. Remember to start at the top, do a skinny tall one, sticking out the top there, and put in all of the ones, rest of it. Remember to hang over the dark brown so it breaks up that hard line. Makes it really look like a pine cone. Probably one of the most intimidating parts of this, if you don't include the actual text, and we'll show you how to do that. It's not as hard as one would think. If you've ever written in cursive, I think you can handle it. As you move to the bottom, don't forget to make them a little bit skinnier. It'll give you the illusion that it's curved. Just like that. All right. And now we move on to a few more of these leaves. Let's do the red color first. Let's pop open this lovely red color. This is the light English red, straight out of this packet. It's a nice rusty, but very vibrant red. And let's start doing some of these leaves. Again, just the tap and drag process. Repeat that from the brown ones that we did earlier. You can switch to the bigger brush here if you would like to. It might fill in a little bit faster, and I may just do that because some of these are pretty big. So I'm just switching to the bigger round brush here to fill this in a little bit faster. Be careful not to put your hand in paint, because I nearly smudged my pine cone. There we go, smudging my pine cone. It's all right, you've got some of the base color in your kit that you can come back and touch it up. If you based it yourself at home with your own paints, hope you save some of that base color. All right, while I've got this red out, I'm gonna go ahead and do this little red heart here. What I'm gonna do is just do a little circle at each high spot on this heart, and then just drag it down to the point. Perfect. And you can make the points a little bit higher if you want. Like that. And then just little dots, starting bigger, getting smaller. Lovely. Go ahead and rinse out your brush. I'm gonna rinse this one out. And now we're gonna do the yellow. Again, just rinse and repeat the tap and drag. My brush had a little too much water in it. If you get a lot of water when you rinse them, just use that paper towel to get all the water out of your brush before you dip into your paint, or it's gonna be a little hard to apply. And it'll be very thin. Okay. Change position. You may not be able to see while I'm doing this, just so I can get my hand in the right spot. With the yellow paint here that we're doing these leaves in, a lot of acrylic yellows are pretty see-through when you put them on to a canvas. So you may need to go back and do a second coat, especially if you've got pencil lines underneath showing through. So just keep that in mind. You may want to go back, do a second coat on some of these yellow ones. Yellow paint just is a little bit see-through. Does not coat as well. All right, and that is all of our leaves painted in. Looking pretty good, right? Okay. Now, like I said, we're going back to this dark brown to do some detailing in these leaves. We're going to do the stems and the little veins that come off of that. Now I'm using that tiny, almost through this brush, tiny little round brush to do that. And now what I want you to think as you're painting these stems is you want to start at the base. You want to push a little bit harder so they're thicker. And then as you move to the end, I want you to slowly lift up on that brush so you get a nice sharp point at the end. Okay? So push for a dark, thick center. And then as you move, lift, and it fades off. Great? Now we want to do some of these veins coming off. Same process, push and then lift. As you get used to it, you'll go faster, and your lifts will form a sharper point. Just a really quick flick. Think of your brush like a magic wand of sorts. Just push and flick. I'm gonna skip the yellow down here because it's a little bit wet, so I'm just gonna start up here. And if these aren't perfectly straight, that's not a big deal, because what part of a leaf is perfect, right? They all look a little different. And a little bit of wavy line is more interesting anyway. When you're putting in these veins, I also want you to think about the power of odd numbers. As you're painting, odd numbers are more pleasing to your eye as you're looking at a painting. So as you put in these little veins, don't put in an even number. Don't put in 4 veins every time. Put in 3, put in 5, break them up. Don't put them directly across from each other. It just is more interesting that way, and it looks more natural. Since these come from nature, these leaves, you want odd numbers. You can do even numbers every once in a while, but odds just look a little better. Just go through and do these for all your leaves. Get some of these yellows, they're a little wet still. Ooh, that's a thick stem. Oh well. Not a big deal. Great. There are some areas that I'm seeing that I'm going to want to come back and do second coats on. There's some spots in the green in different places. You're welcome to do that at the very end. But we are going to move on to our text now. If you purchase the kit, you'll have outlines. If you haven't, I want you to go ahead and sketch in the give thanks saying. You can use your own font style if you want. If you want to use your own kind of handwriting, that's totally fine. But those of you with the kits, we have outlines so it's easier to follow. We're going to switch to the flat brushes. This little guy is the first one I'm going to use. And this is kind of a faux calligraphy as you have it. We're not using like a traditional pen and nib, obviously, to do this. So this is a faux calligraphy. We're using this bright, bright blue. It's so popular right now, this bright cerulean blue. And I'm going to start up here at the top. Let's see, how do I want to... If you're at home, you can move your canvas around and kind of position it the best way so you can get a good angle with your brush. But I'm trying to make it so that you can see it here. So I'm going to start here, I believe. And you're going to want just the very tip of your brush touching the canvas. And you want it so that you're using just that tip in a nice straight line to drag, to do these tiny little lines. You don't want a whole lot of paint on your brush or it's going to get all blobby. And this is a little bit of a finesse thing. If you don't have a really steady hand, this can be pretty hard. You can always leave this little swirl off if you want, put in another leaf or something. It's too hard for you to get this nice thin line. And as we're moving closer to this G, I want this line to get a little bit fatter. So I'm pushing a little bit harder, rotating the brush a little bit. Great. I'm going to start from the other direction because it's more comfortable for me. And just start filling all of this in. You can always make your line a little bit fatter if it's a little woogity. It's a very technical term, woogity. All right, now we're getting into the actual G here. So what I want you to do as you're filling this in is I want you to follow at least one edge of these lines all the way. So just follow along that one edge, make it nice and clean and sharp. Go outside of the line a little bit, it's not a big deal. All right, I'm gonna stop there because I don't want my paint to dry. So what you wanna do is thicken up the areas that would naturally be thicker if you were doing true calligraphy. Work in sections like this. Keep thin spots where it would be thinner, where your curves shift into another direction. It would be a little bit thinner there, right? Again, you can look at the reference image to give you a good idea of where the thick spots are and where the thin spots are. In these areas, if you want to switch to the bigger brush, you totally can. I'm going to keep with the little brush. I just feel like I have more control with it, and then I don't have to keep switching back and forth between this little guy and the big guy. When you get to the fat areas, you can definitely use the full edge of that brush to make it nice and thick, fill it in quickly. Great, and then just repeat that process for the rest of your letters. Follow one edge and then thicken it up. I use the brush up on the edge to do these. And then when I thicken, I use the flat of the brush. You can work from any direction that you need to. If you need to flip your canvas over, go for it. I've had a lot of practice in my life, so I think I can manage it this direction. All right, now we're on to the thanks part of this painting. This is going to be a lot easier. It's a lot of this little tiny flat brush, and you just tap and drag just like you were doing with the other leaves. However, you'll want to tap with a little bit of a firmer brush stroke so that you have a nice fat, thick start. And then, let's see if I can draw a straight line. And then drag it out. See how I got all wiggity? It's totally fine. You can do that. And then just go back and fix it. That's what's great about this painting. And just drag. And then when you want to do the other side, you can move around, but just so that you can see what I'm doing. Tap it fairly thick, give it a little wiggle, and then drag. And then you've got a fat end there. And just do that same thing for all of these letters. Again, I'm using the flat side of this brush for the most part. Fill it in fairly quickly. I'm using the edge part to touch up any of the lines that didn't go on super smooth. Oh, and I just smudged my E. That's what the base color is for, everyone. All right. And there's all your letters. Let's go up and hit this dot on the I. Don't forget that. I almost did. Lovely. And then there's these two blue lines here. So for these, I'm going to draw a nice thin line to get it started. And then just kind of push it out to get it a little bit rounded at the start. Well, and then I screw it up and put a line down there, but that's all right. We can touch it up at the end. Great. And then just make it a little bit fatter at the start. All right, right at the end, before I finish it all up, we're doing these dots. All right, one tool in this kit that you might have been a little confused about is the Q-tips. This is so that we can do this dot border around the outside. So you want to dip your Q-tip end in your red paint, and this is where your palette really comes into play, because you want to tap it on your palette to create a little bit of a dot end on there, so it's nice and flat on the end. Great. And you want to load it up with paint, and I like to start at center and just tap it on, and you got a perfect little dot. Isn't that fancy? What a cheat to get perfect little dots. And then I like to do the corners, and then I just like to split centers so that it's perfectly spread out. You can put as many of these on here as you want, or as few as you want. If this is too many for you, just keep it with a few. Just keep dipping back in the paint. Great. And on these edges, I liked to bring them down. I'm going to bring this one down a little bit closer because this leaf isn't as far out as on the original painting. Just split centers again. Just like that. Just do these dots all around on the outside here. What a quick, neat trick. I love this trick. I find that you can only do about 2 dots at a time with the paint, or it starts to not create a perfect circle anymore. Lovely. I think I'm going to stop splitting center just so they are a little more evenly spaced here. Just do 2 there. All right. You could go through and measure each of these out perfectly so they're perfectly spaced, but I don't know that that's super necessary. It looks a little more handmade this way if it's not perfectly even. Great. And if you wanted to, if you have a really steady hand, you can go through and do this line. I'm not going to do that here because I think I've had 1 too many cups of coffee today and my hand's a little shaky. So there you go. Q-tip dots. Magic. Now there are some mistakes that I have, like some smudges and some different spots that I would love to touch up with this base color that I will have given you if you purchase the kit. And then you just want to go through and tap on there. It might take a couple of coats to cover up any of those little mistakes. You're welcome to go back and do your second coats on any of these leaves and things. Cover up any of the pencil marks that maybe you didn't get to. And just touch it up from there. Otherwise, that's the painting. Pretty easy, right? Just takes a little bit of a steady hand and you've got a lovely fall painting to put up for all your visitors come Thanksgiving. Thanks so much for coming to watch this. I just want to remind you that these paints that we are using, I sell in store, as well as some different brushes and some different supplies if you would like to do more of these. I also do in-home paint parties if you would like to hire me, Hannah, the owner of Spot of Color, to come into your home and do an at-home paint party. I am available for that. And we will be doing some of these paint parties in and around town as restrictions start to lighten up. So I hope to see you out there painting, enjoying your time, and thanks so much for coming.